Hi, I'm Sarah Cowgill, along with Andrew Moran, Dave Patterson, Graham Noble, and John Clark. And this is the Conservative Five, an online TV production of Liberty Nation News. The COVID pandemic gave Americans one really good gift: a healthy skepticism of federal agencies. Part of this distrust is due to the misinformation about the safety and efficacy of the Rush coronavirus vaccine. And this is prompting the public to dig deeper on the vaccines that we have taken for 60 years and just try to figure out what's being put into our bodies. Let's review reality on RFK's stance on those vaccines.
If we want uptake of vaccines, we need a trustworthy government. In other nations where they don't have mandates, like Japan and a few years ago in Germany, they had the same uptake as we did, without any mandates, because people trust their government. That's what I want to restore to the American people and the vaccine program. I want people to know if the government says something, it's true. It's not manipulative.
And
it's not a noble truth, which is what a certain doctor called his lies.
Well, on the other side of the coin, measles has seen a rise in cases due to declining vaccination rates, or at least that's what the alarmists are telling us. And not that anybody believes in coincidences, but it does seem a little suspect. John Clark, can you separate the wheat from the chaff for us?
Well, there's a lot of wheat and chaff here.
Well, you're in South Dakota. Just figure it out.
Well, it is really quite complex, but I think there is some separation to be done. And I do think that people rightfully have some skepticism of their government agencies, which hopefully Bobby Kennedy will restore. Remember, perhaps, when Anthony Fauci said that COVID vaccines were just like measles. COVID is nothing like measles if you understand microbiology. In fact, we supposedly have lifetime immunity from measles if we've had that shot, or if we've had natural immunity, which Dave probably has. I learned in researching for this today, actually, the vaccines came out in 1963, the year I was born, and I need to be revaccinated because from 1963 to 1967, they used an inactivated mRNA vaccine, which was ineffective. The CDC says so. All right, Dave's good. Dave can tell us what measles are like, perhaps. And actually, most people don't die from measles. And so what I'm seeing is a major spin campaign by the mainstream media here. First of all, the two big criticisms of Kennedy are that he said this is not unusual, and therefore he is sort of minimizing the outbreak and people dying. Well, that's not true. It is not unusual. We have them almost every year. There's a worldwide growth of measles cases. Measles do not appear spontaneously, sua sponte, out of the air. They are transmitted. What you won't hear the mainstream media discussing, unless they're going to fact check that it's false, is the potential for illegal immigrants to come over here and spread it. Of course, it's all the people that are anti-vax or vaccine hesitant, which are increasing in percentages, including in Texas, partly because they don't trust what's just been done with the COVID vaccine. So once again, it's you create the uncertainty and then you criticize the people for what you caused. 5 of the cases, according to the Texas Department of Health, are people who were previously vaccinated. We don't actually have confirmation that this young girl tragically died had measles. We don't know what PCR test was used. My understanding from a contact in D.C. is that she's Mexican. Is she illegal or illegal? Was she around other people? Where did she get it from? And yes, it's spreading, but Kennedy has been true to everything he promised, and he has come out and said, yes, I advocate for measles vaccines, which, by the way, for young children recommended here in Vermont, age 6 to 11 months, they do have higher rates of seizures and other problems and potential death, according to the vaccine adverse event reporting system, than if they had the vaccine a little bit older. Mm-hmm. And the vaccine reporting system will kick out cases that might have been vaccine caused if they say, well, we don't have enough evidence, or that was SIDS, or what have you. And then we have the converse thing we saw in COVID, which is if you die in a car crash with COVID, they categorize you, or you get shot in the head in a gun battle and you had COVID, they say
dark on me.
Well, I'm just telling you that they've manipulated the statistics. This is breeded distrust. So this whole push is going to push to what? Mandate more big pharma? Kennedy is very clear that he still respects parental consent.
All right, Dave, the and John Clark brought this up, so we're just going to build on this a little bit. Let's circle back to Texas. What do you consider an outbreak? One case where a child tragically died, 2 or 20. I mean, where is this outbreak panic coming from?
I think that, Sarah, that you have to go to the Center for Disease Control and what their definition is. And the CDC considers 3 related cases in a defined area as an outbreak. And 3. And, I have some statistics that, that might surprise you. The West Texas has been the focus so far of the attention. As of the end of February, there have been 164 cases of measles reported in 8 states, 8 other states: Alabama, California, Georgia, Kentucky, New Jersey, New Mexico, New York, and Rhode Island. But in 2024, there were 285 cases of measles. In the 2025 so far, about 95% of the people who contracted measles were not vaccinated. In 2024, 89% of the measles cases were among unvaccinated. But what I found that puts the current outbreak in some perspective is that between 1985 and 1995, there was an annual average number of cases of measles of 6,832, with the highest number occurring in 1990 when there were 27,808 cases. That kind of puts the 164 in perspective.
Hey, Andrew, you have young children. Can you weigh in here on the massive amount of vaccines offered to the youngins or pushed on the youngins? I mean, I had vaccines as a kid, but not just throwing 8 or 9 of them at you when you're 8 months old.
Yeah, well, my kids are updated on their vaccines, and you pretty much have to be if you want your kids to participate in events up here, or even go to school. Before we went on air, I was looking at our kids' vaccine schedule, and here's what we have here. We have diphtheria, tetanus, pertussis, polio, hemophilus influenza type B, hepatitis B, measles, mumps, rubella, varicella, with chickenpox, pneumococcal conjugate, meningococcal conjugate, rotavirus, and human papilloma virus. Those are the things you have to have. They had everything up until they're 5 years old. The next shot is when they're in middle school. That's the vaccine schedule. I was comparing that to the United States, and pretty much the United States is roughly the same, plus or minus a couple of more. This doesn't bother me. Vaccines, I think, these are decades long in the making. The difference with the COVID vaccine is that it was not decades in the making. It was happened overnight. We expect this thing would take 5 years to manufacture. Instead, it was just produced in 9 months. What bothers me with the whole medical establishment is that during the pandemic, all the common sense from the medical establishment was just abandoned. They all said that, immunity is not a thing anymore. And, you shouldn't worry about the future when you're wearing face masks and having all these preventative measures. Lo and behold, a couple of years out of this pandemic, you're having all these different things returning and accelerating with fast and furious. We just had norovirus. Norovirus, that thing was on the decline up here. And then in the last couple of years, it's been skyrocketing. I read this article, I think it was in CBC. And now these doctors are talking about, now our immunological memories are fading because we were locked in and we were maxed up for however many of years. But who foisted upon this? Who recommended these policies? These very scientists who now warn about these very things. I remember the pandemic, we worried about, we questioned, what about immunity? Or what about in the future when your immunity is tested by whatever disease? And they said, you're crazy, that's cuckoo talk. Why would you talk about those things? Now, fast forward, here's the very things we're dealing with, and now they're so severe. Our kids were in hospital a couple of years with RSV, and they had pneumonia, and they had COVID, of course, and they had all these different things. Now they got norovirus. Now, the influenza, whenever it comes back, it hits them with like a brick. And one more thing, the flu vaccine, that's something that we should be looking into, because that thing this year had a 40% efficacy rate. My kids had it and they had flu twice in 1 month. What the freak is that? So that's what we should be concerned about. I'm not too worried for now with the vaccines, because our kids, they're developing greatly. They're very smart. They're doing well in school. They're very healthy. Of course, besides the winter.
For all the flus. in your house.
So that's my position on the general vaccine.
I think all the
healthier
creeping
food.
all the creeping crud in Canada is at Andrew's house, so just avoid him. Okay, this is the thing I kind of find more disturbing than the fight over vaccinations, but there's a very close relationship between Big Pharma and the FDA. I mean, is it too much gov love going on here, Graham?
Well, yeah, I mean it's a kind of a perennial problem, and I guess an unavoidable problem in a free society is that you're going to have people who go to work for the government, and because of their position within the government and their specific skill set and the specific experience and knowledge that they gained, they're going to go out when their government time is over, unless they're a career bureaucrat. They're going to go out into the private sector and they're going to get offered a nice job out there, which is kind of the leveraging what they learned in government, using it in the private sector. Well, how can that be avoided? I agree, Sarah. It gets really worrisome when we're talking about certain, kind of science-based and particularly health-based government agencies that have got this, kind of interchangeability of personnel with the private sector. And particularly, the pharmaceutical companies and the FDA, historically, the FDA is pretty much in the pocket of the pharmaceutical companies. FDA commissioners regularly end up on the boards of directors of one of the big pharma companies, be it Pfizer, Johnson & Johnson, Moderna, whoever. John actually wrote an excellent article about this recently in the pages of libertynation.com. He pointed out a couple of great examples. For instance, Scott Gottlieb was the FDA commissioner for about 2 years, from 2017 to 2019, FDA commissioner. And then what did he do after he finished his time in that position? After I believe he resigned, and I believe he said that he wanted to spend more time with his family. Well, obviously his family all last worked for Pfizer.
Ever.
Because that's where he went. He went and he got on the board of directors of Pfizer. You've almost got a situation where these pharmaceutical companies are kind of embedding their employees inside the FDA. And then, and they're doing a couple of years there, and then they're going back to the private sector, back to big pharma. And I have mixed feelings on vaccinations. I think some are good, some are probably we should be a little more skeptical of. But I'm not a complete anti-vaxxer. I mean, as Andrew said, some of these vaccines have been around forever, and they're tried and tested, and that's fine. But it is concerning when you've got profit-driven pharmaceutical companies basically almost like loaning their employees to the Food and Drug Administration of the U.S. government.
If I could jump in, I think I need to issue a disclaimer, though, about something I said earlier. I feel that I compelled to that. I was not indicating that the case in Texas was attributable to illegals, just that the media does not allow that to even be discussed while they go after parents who may have legitimate questions about giving young children vaccines. And I have another
excuse. There's not enough information. I think I'm going to close with the sage words of our Mr. John Clark, who apparently all of us now worship when it comes to vaccinations. Many Americans believe they are being double jabbed by an oligopoly of pharmaceutical manufacturers who don't bother revolving the door, but just leave it brazenly wide open. And they are now closely watching who makes their vaccines and who regulates them. Well said, Mr. Clark. Thanks, panel, and thank you for watching. Well, that's it for our Conservative 5 panel today. Check out our other C5 shows and segments on your favorite video platform, YouTube, Vimeo, Rumble. We're on them all. As well, Liberty Nation News has its own Roku channel where you can see all of her TV productions. Now, Liberty Nation does not endorse candidates, campaigns, or legislation, and this presentation is no endorsement. I'm your host, Sarah Cowgill. Thanks for joining us today for the latest news and commentary. Your choice for free thinking, free speech, libertynation.com.